Hello and welcome to Abstract America's Operations Specialist Training Program. My name is Frank and I'm a senior consultant with Abstract America. With me tonight is Wilbur, who is also a senior consultant with Abstract America. And Wilbur is going to take us through lesson 13 of our Operations Specialist Training Program. So Wilbur, take us through.
Thank you, Frank. And so as Frank has mentioned, we're going to the 13th lesson of this Operations Specialist Training Program. And over the course of this lesson, we'll look at the different methods of importing and exporting data into and out of Excel. And therefore, the scope of this lesson will be to see how we can import text files into Excel. And in this, we'll concentrate on tab delimited text files. And then we'll also see how we can use the Microsoft Wizard to import data from Microsoft Access, and then which of course comes as part of the Microsoft Office suite. And then we'll also see how to export data to a text file. Now, of course, it's good to know why or what instances will necessitate us knowing how to import and export data into Excel. Well, one of them is, there are times when you work with sources that do not support the Excel file format. And because of this, you may be forced to either save your data in a text file, a tab delimited text file, or or using the CSV comma separated values, or perhaps you were using a database of sorts, and so you're using Access. And so basically, if you're working with sources or destinations that do not support the Excel file format, then you may have to use other methods and then find ways of importing those formats into Excel. And another way is if you are working with files that were originally created in different formats. And so perhaps you would go into an organization, and then previously they were working, let's say, with other office suites like LibreOffice or something. So you may need to find a way of importing that data into Excel to suit your workflow. So as I said, what we're going to look at, we'll look at text files, and then we'll look at Microsoft Access database tables. So the first thing that we'll start is text files, and it's important for us to consider the different types that are supported when importing to Excel. And here we have two major ones, that is tab delimited files and comma separated values. Now, text files that can be imported into Excel have certain, or rather they employ the use of certain special characters to separate values that lie in different columns and in different rows. So tab delimited files employ the tab as the special character that separates different values in different rows, whereas comma separated values utilize commas to separate each field of text. Sometimes a file could be labeled a .csv file, but instead of a comma, you use semicolons. So it is important to first of all know what delimiter or separator or special character is used in your text file before you begin the process of importing. And this, of course, will help maintain the integrity of your data even during and after you import. So when we're working with text files and we want to import, there are these methods are the copy paste method, and then there is the using the open file dialog in Excel, and the third one is using the context menu open with, that is within your file manager on your computer. And so we'll look at all these three briefly. So the first thing we'll do is to head out to our comma separated, our tab delimited value, I'm sorry, and just have a look at how it is. So this is how our data looks like. And you can see that between different fields, you have a space, and this space is essentially a tab. Okay. And so you can see between values that lie in different columns, but within the same row, you have tabs that separate them. But then you can see that there's a clear distinction between the rows. Yeah, and so for tab delimited files, then tabs, the tab character is used to separate them. And of course, you can see here that this is a .txt file. So it's just a normal, text file. Yeah, it's only that the data within is delimited using the tab character. And so the first method of importing this data into Excel is quite simple, and it's simply copying and pasting the data. And so for that, we'll just select anywhere within the file, and then click Control A, which is the shortcut for selecting all. And of course, you'll see all your data highlighted, and then Control C to copy it, and then we will head out to Excel. And when we are in Excel, we'll simply paste using the command Control V, or the shortcut Control V. And if you actually look at it, you'll realize that your data has been placed in rows and columns, and those rows and columns correspond to the row and column structure that we see here, because you see there are distinct rows, and this particular row can be seen here, and this other row can be seen here, and then of course the distinction between columns is also visible in the data that we have selected. So if your text file contains valid tab delimited values, then you can very simply copy and paste it, and paste the data into Excel, and Excel will take care of separating the values and aligning them in rows and columns, and it's actually quite simple. Now we'll close our file. We'll explore the second means, or the second way of importing tab delimited values, and that is using the Excel open file dialog. Now for that, we just created a new sheet, or you could create a new workbook, and then we go to the file tab at the top, file, and then here in the backstage, we go to open. Okay, so we go to open, and when we click open, of course we have we'll click browse so that we can go to our file system and then locate the file that we are looking for. So you'll just navigate to the folder where your tab delimited file is. Now by default, you will not see it in the list. All you will see are Excel documents, and that's because the filter that is applied by default is that captures only Excel files. So what you want to do is to capture all the files that are here so that we can have them listed. So you'll just change the filter to all files. Okay, and once you do that, of course, you will see all the files within that folder appearing, and we will scroll down to our txt file, our tab delimited file, and select it and click open. And once you do that, Excel will simply pass or go through that whole document, identify its structure, and you can see here it shows you the text import wizard. So using the file open dialog method is also referred to as using the text import wizard. And so here you're able to set certain values, but because Excel has automatically detected, it knows that it's not just, you're not working with fixed with data, but you're working with delimited data. And if your data has headers, you can of course state that your data has headers. And then the other thing you can change, you may want to start importing from the first row, or you can increment the number of rows up to the very end if you want to. But now here we'll start from the very beginning, and there are other options you can change, but for now we'll just leave it at that. The only change we have made here is to indicate that our data has headers. And then the next thing is Excel automatically determines that our delimiter is the tab, and of course we're working with a tab delimited file. In case, remember we mentioned that before you begin the process of importing, it's good to know what delimiter your file is using. So if it's using a tab or a semicolon or a comma or space, it's good for you to know so that you're able to make the change here appropriately. But because our data is using the tab character as the special character, then we'll leave it as it is. And then down here, you are able to preview how your data looks like. You can see, of course, the distinct rows and the distinct columns. And so we'll click next. And when we finally come here, there are other values that you may want to change. And that is selecting what kind of data falls within each column. Okay, so it could either just be general, or it could be text, or it could be a date. So that will of course influence how Excel formats your data eventually. Yeah, but for now we'll just leave it as general. And you can see the next button is grayed out. All that we do now is finish. And when we finish, of course, Excel will go through it, and you can see that the results that we have here are pretty much the same as what we got in the previous one. And so you can see it has identified our rows and identified our columns, and we are actually quite okay. Now, the third method of importing a tab delimited file is actually from the file system itself. From the file system itself, that is using the context menu, open with option. Now, to do that, we'll need to navigate to the file manager, and then when we get to our text file, instead of double clicking it to open, we right click, and so the context menu pops up. And when it does, there are all these options that we have, but the one that is important to us is open with. And open with leads us to another menu, and here we have different programs that we can assign to open the application with. And what we'll do is to select Excel. Now, perchance you may not have Excel here at the top. Of course, for me, Excel is here because I have used it before to open .txt files. But supposing you do not have it, then all you need to do is to click this menu item, choose another app, and once you click it, it will give you an option of different apps that may open the file. In case you don't see it here, just click more apps, and then you're able to scroll down. And if Excel doesn't appear here, then you will click here, look for another app on this PC, and then another open dialog will appear. And what you'll need to do is navigate to the folder where Excel resides and select it. But now in this case, we'll just right click, open with, and then choose Excel. And once you do that, Excel will just go through your file and be able to update it accordingly. I think here it has just taken us back to the one that we're working with. So let's not save that and repeat the process so that you can actually see it step by step. So remember, select the file, right click, then open with Excel. And we give it time, and you can actually see that we have our data here with the distinct rows and columns. Okay, if we expand the columns, you're able to see it's pretty much the result of the steps that we have gone through before. Now it's good to note that what we have here is a .txt file. It's not an Excel file, it's a .txt file. So it's important to save it in a different in the Excel workbook format so that you're able to use it as an ordinary workbook. For that, you click File and then Save As, change the name. So let's say tab Delimited, Excel, and then change the type to workbook, and then we'll click Save. And when that happens, then we are able to work with it as an ordinary workbook, and the formulae and the styling that we apply will be maintained. If it remains as a .txt and you apply formulae or you apply styling, when you exit, they will not persist because it's a txt file and it doesn't have the capacity of saving those complex functions. And so what we have just seen is how to open text files, tab delimited text files. And we have seen that we can do that through three methods. One, just opening the text file, copying the data and pasting it in Excel. The second option, going to the Excel file, open dialog, navigating to our file, and then using the file or the text import wizard, and we got our data. And the third option was using the context menu, open with menu option. Now, the second thing we'll look at here is how we can import data from Access or Microsoft Access, which is the database created and distributed by Microsoft. Now, for that, we'll just create a new sheet. Now, in order for you to open or to interact with Microsoft Access databases, we'll need to go to the Data tab at the top. And once we are there, we go to the very first option, which is Get Data. And of course, you can look at the tooltip, which says that this option allows you to easily discover, connect, and combine data from multiple sources, then shape and refine it to meet your needs. Now you can actually see that there are more options once you click this, and there's option of importing from a file, and there are different options here, or import from a database. And when you actually select this, there's a different menu item that appears to the side. You can either import a SQL Server database or a Microsoft Access database from Analysis Systems or from SQL Server Analysis Services database. There are other options from Azure, from online services, and from other sources. But what we're going to focus on today is how to import from Microsoft Access database. And so we'll go to this second menu item, and then in the child menu item, select from Microsoft Access database. Now, once you click it, it takes some time to load, but it opens the import data dialog. And in this, you're able to navigate to the location, the physical location of your database. And Access databases have the extension .accdb, simply .access database.accdb. In case you don't see it, you're able to change it from down here, either all Access databases or all files. So you just navigate to where it's found and select it and import. Now you'll give it some time to establish a connection. Okay, so it has identified the items. Now, what happens is Excel actually connects to the database and extracts all the tables, or gets a list of all the tables that are available within the database. And now it's up to you to determine which kind of table you'd want to employ or to import. So you can either import them individually by selecting and then clicking the load option down here, or you can actually select more than one. And of course, once you select a table, it is you are able to preview it on the side. Okay, so this is our customers table. We're able to preview and see that we have 2 entries. Employee also has 2 entries. Invoice has no entry. Invoice details, no entry. And vehicles has 3 entries. Yeah, so you're able to preview here before you import. Supposing you want to import more than one, then you'll come up here and you have this select multiple items checkbox. Yeah, you check it, and then you're able to click on the tables that you want to import. Okay, so let us say you just want to import all of those tables. So we'll select them and then click on the load button. When we click, we'll give Excel some time to read, and you can actually see here that it is loading the data. Yeah, so we just give it time to do that, and we track the progress. Of course, again, depending on the size of your database and the number of entries in the different tables, then it may take some time, or it may take a shorter period of time. So we'll just give it a few seconds to load. It will load and then create relationships between the different tables. Yeah. And then you can hover on different tables, and when you hover, you can actually see that your data has been imported. So this is our customers table. This is our employee table. You can actually see you can see the rows and the different columns that exist. Yeah. So that is essentially how you import data from a Microsoft Access database. Remember, we went to the data tab, and the very first button here, get data, has different options of importing, and you can of course explore all of them. Our scope today was limited to Microsoft Access databases, but you can explore the different options that are available. Okay, and so I trust that is something we are able to do. Now, the last thing we'll want to do is see how we can export a file, perhaps to a text file. Yeah, just see how we can export a file to a text file. Now remember, we mentioned at the beginning that one of the reasons for us importing data from different types, from different file formats, is because the source and the destination, or two people might be working using different software. So perhaps you may be using Excel, but someone somewhere, or the computer you want to feed your data to may not support Excel. Okay, so there is need to find a more common file format that you can then transfer your data with, and which can now be imported on the other end, and so on. So you may find yourself in situations where you'll need to export your data to a text file, because text files are more universal, and it's quite easy to open them using different kinds of software. And so that's what we're going to look at as our last aspect of this lesson. So we had here our text file, which you can still, actually let's just create a new workbook, that is file, new blank workbook, and then let us use the first method of copying and pasting our data. So we copy, and then we come here and we paste it. So suppose this is the data that we are working with. Of course, it's a very long list. Now, in order for us to export this data to a text file, then what we'll need to do is to go to the Files tab, or the File tab here at the top. And while we're there, we go down to the Save As option or button. And when we click it, the first thing is to select a place where you'd want to save it. And I've selected where I want to save it. Now, depending on the version of Excel that you're working with, it can either give you a save as dialog automatically, or it may take you here. I'm using Office 365, so it brings me here. Now, there are two ways. One, you can actually trigger the save as dialog by clicking the more options item here. That is if it doesn't take you there directly. And so that's what we'll do. We'll just click, and it brings us this. This is the save as dialog. You can see here, this is save as, and this whole window is called a dialog. Now, once that happens, by default, Excel saves workbooks in the .xlsx using that extension, which signifies an Excel workbook. But you're able to change it. You're able to change the format of saving by altering this save as type. And so you'll click, and it's a drop down. So you have all these options, and it's up to you to determine specifically what you want to use. But in this case, because we want to convert it back to a tab delimited text file, then we will look for the .txt, but the one that is preceded with text, and then in brackets, tab delimited. There are quite a number of .txts here. There is this Unicode text, and then there is text, Macintosh, MS-DOS, and so on. But what we're interested in is text, and then in brackets, tab delimited. And once you select that, we can just leave it as it is. So it's going to be book2.txt. And when we click save, of course, Excel is going to save it. And you can see here that the name and the file format, which is signified by the extension, have changed. And of course, if we go to our file, our system, and we look for book2.txt, we find it here, and we can open it. And when we open it, you actually see your data as a tab in the tab delimited format. And so it's going to be quite easy to share this to someone else who can then import it into whatever software they're using and work on it. And supposing they were to send you this file, then we have seen ways in which you can import this data into Excel and work with it. Yeah, so there are different file formats, of course, that Excel allows you to save to, and it's up to you just to explore and decide what you'd want to work with. And so I believe with that, we have come to the end of lesson 13. Unless Frank, you'd want to add something.
I think that's enough, Wilbur. Thank you.
Welcome.